The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program How to Control Your Emotions, negative ones, of course. And of course, I've said before, you need to control the positive ones too, but we'll get into that in just a few minutes. If you're going to listen to this program or watch this program, I would appreciate you just sort of relaxing and not getting too excited or upset. Listen to me or watch me calmly, if you can, and try to understand what I'm saying. And understanding is not the same as learning. And learning and understanding are two different animals, and they create two different types of people. And to study and to absorb large amounts of knowledge tends to make one prideful and steal one's soul, if I may use that vernacular, that word, steal one's soul away from another process of learning called understanding. Now, knowledge, such as I'm revealing to you now, through my mouth it's knowledge. When you hear it, it's learning. But something more is required. If you don't have this something more, you'll be a parrot. If you just learn me mechanically and accept blindly the things I'm saying, then that will substitute for your own discovery. And I wouldn't want that for you. I have grown in my own life by inner revelations, understanding leading to understanding. And it leads to the truth. It leads to the fount or the ground of your being. And it creates the type of person that is humane and loving and thoughtful and gentle and caring and wise, and one that might even live forever. But the other side of this knowledge is the learning. And learning comes from simply escaping reality and trying to be your own God. See, if you understand something, if you understand and you stand under the inwardly revealed knowledge, you will be required to follow a course, a moral course, not of your own making, but of some grand design that you were created to serve. But in our pridefulness, we are seduced or allow ourselves to be seduced by the serpent of knowledge, the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil, and we absorb ourselves into knowledge to find ourselves in knowledge. We lose ourselves in knowledge to find ourselves, to evolve a pride, a God apart from God, and where we think we know everything, where we can find the answers to our problems and we can be what we want to be and aim for the moon or the stars and the beyond, and to evolve something called pridefulness. Now, there's only two egos in the universe. There's only one pride in the universe, supreme ego. And any time we build our ego in conflict or in competition with the supreme ego, we feel guilt, conflict. And learning, Solomon says, we shall ever be learning, but never coming to knowledge of truth. Of making books, there's no end, see. Much learning is the weariness of the flesh. All you do is, parroting and learning and informing yourself and losing yourself and acquiring memories and thoughts and pictures and bits of information and facts. And then you try to decide, to make decisions on these facts. And in every decision, every time you make a decision, weighing the negative against the positive, the pro against the con, every time you exercise this pridefulness amid knowledge, you gather your knowledge, you gather your facts, and you shoot for the moon, and you make your decision. That decision-making process, based upon the knowledge of pride being playing God, see what I'm saying? Every time you exercise that prerogative of decision-making, using from the subconscious mind all the facts you've gathered, the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil, there is great conflict and bigger problems. And all the problems of your life come from knowledge, not understanding. The wrong person grows by absorbing itself into knowledge, seeking something in knowledge that it can never really be. But the result of acquiring knowledge, losing yourself in knowledge like you are losing yourself in some kind of drug, which it is, some kind of fantasy, some kind of false hope. The end result of moving away from understanding into knowledge is conflict. A type of human being that that grows unholy, stands unholy in the place of the holy. And the big problems people have today with learning and studying and worrying, it's all process of dredging up knowledge and making decisions, is the end of the result that they can't make decisions. And it's too hard, too painful. Now, what I'm trying to instill, if you like, to get across is that you don't need to study me and learn me. Because if you do, you will come into conflict with yourself. And you'll have more, the knowledge which I'm giving you runs parallel to the knowledge you should be discovering. It's like too much too soon. It'll make you aware in a bizarre sort of way. What I'm saying to you right now, you can hear what I'm saying and you understand what I'm saying in a superficial sense, because you do have something called understanding. But if you start to learn it, expecting it to work, it won't. It'll just give you psychic indigestion. You get frustrated, you have all this knowledge, you remember what I'm saying, and even if you remember all the good things that I'm saying, still, it won't do you any good. Because even learning good knowledge, even learning truth, in its purest form, the facts that should inform you, still, if you learn it and absorb it, it'll just become part of your pride, the system of your pride, completing the ego, and that will cause the conflict with the divine ego. So I'm saying we must start from the very beginning. Forget learning. Let what I'm saying go through your one ear and come out the other. It doesn't matter if you don't remember. Is that fair? It does not matter if you don't remember a darn thing that I'm saying. All I want is to ring a bell. See? Ding. It's a little light to go on. I want, just as you listen to me, a little aha. And you may even, while you get one of these little aha experiences, my conversation or my dialogue with my audience would continue, and you might miss a lot of what I'm saying. Never mind. I will trigger revelations in you. And that's where your life begins. You must discover. You must not learn me. You can read my books, and you can listen to my tapes, but you must not try to remember. If something happens to stay in there and come back to you sometime, and then something else that you've observed or read come back to you and come together in little aha, that's fine. But you must not learn me. Who understands what I've just said? Learning is your problem because you've been trained to learn, to study, to acquire knowledge and get brownie buttons for that in school and church too. Any questions on that so far? No questions. Everybody agree to that? Yes.
Does school make young people more into their ego pride?
Yes. In other words, you do not improve children by sending them to school. You turn them into little Japanese wind-up toys at the best, or you turn them into educated savages at the worst. I don't know which one's worse. And instead of robbing a train with a gun, he'll rob the whole company with a pen. Right? So what you do, too much knowledge is too soon is very dangerous. And it pumps one's ego and pride up to where one even cannot stand the things that one is educated and trained to do. You'll find people who become doctors who can't stand being doctors. They're teaching tennis. They feel more comfortable with it, even though their skills as doctors could be useful. The trouble is they've learned it through pressure and mother, father pressuring them through school, school pressuring them at school, and they built up this log of knowledge. But the trouble is they're functioning in pridefulness. So that every time they help a patient, every time they do something nice for someone, even the approval for their skills, which is coming out of pride and knowledge, you see, they can't handle the appreciation. It's like a person who is pressured to learn the violin. And if mother or father spent a lot of money and time pressuring that child to learn, even though he had natural skills to begin with, excuse me, the very fact that he starts to react and take his motivation and absorb his training and disciplines from a teacher. Every morning the teacher comes and the parents pay for the lessons and he resents it, but he's not allowed to unfold from his own discovery, from his own musical talents. He may become a great concert violinist, but every time he plays, it's the applause from the audience. It's encouraging that whole process, and the guilt of it, the pride swells up. He does not know how to deal with applause. It's supportive of the ego, and encourages him to be more of a great concert violinist. But meanwhile, he hates the concert violinist. This particular one hates the audience because somehow he senses the audience are encouraging him to kill himself. Because that's what death is all about. Pride is death. It increases his conflict. But then the guilt for the resentment towards the audience, because after all, the audience doesn't understand what's going on inside his cranium. But the guilt for resenting the audience makes him feel like he needs their approval again. And now he plays like a little trained seal, because he needs now to absorb himself in the love and the acclaim of the audience to take away the guilt. But it doesn't take away the guilt, it only adds to it. It only encourages him to be a little puppet, see, practicing his knowledge and his pridefulness and the skills of pride. You see? It's almost like, yes, I'll just make a point, as like a young lady was saying to, well, actually it was my daughter-in-law that was saying to my wife, she has these allergies, and then she remembers when she was a little girl that her mother always told her what a wonderful person she was. Always a wonderful person. What a wonderful person. You're so pretty, so wonderful, so clever, so smart. And then she found she had to live up to this cleverness and smartness. And she herself had to live up to it. It was a great conflict because she never could. The more she tried to live up to it, the more she lived down to it. The whole process of trying to live up to something, an image, a prideful image that people have put in your mind that you fall for. When you're young, you can't help but fall for this. After all, when it tells you how wonderful you are, you don't know how to deal with that. And they put a pride into you. It's the same thing as encouraging a child. For instance, a child does something, does his homework well, he draws a pretty picture. And all of a sudden, the child brings it to the parent for critique, right? And the parent goes, "How wonderful! Oh!" Well, he may never pick up. Oh, thank you. He may never pick up. May never pick up another drawing pencil again. He's got all the pride he ever needs, or he can no longer function from his own motivation. He comes down to accept the applause, the praise, and no longer can he function from the evolution of his real self. Now he can only function when he gets praised. Now the pride builds, but in conflict with the divine ego. So therefore, you either become addicted to praise and you can't function. You can become great stars, great doctors, and some people are, the trauma of pridefulness, the fall of man through praise like this. We're speaking about knowledge and praise and absorbing oneself in this sort of quagmire. It's a trauma because all of sin, original sin, the fall to original knowledge, the knowledge of good, the knowledge of evil, to make oneself wise in one's own eyes. Remember that? Well, that was a trauma. And in traumas, you've got two states. You either have an aversion or you have an attraction. See? In other words, if you were raped and that was a trauma, you'd either have aversion to sex or you'd be fascinated with it. So, therefore, a person who is praised can become addicted to it and be completely destroyed, become a total puppet, like the Japanese and kamikaze pilots. See? And you can become addicted. You become a great brain, but no brains, you're dead as a doornail inside. Ever met these great brains? No, they got educated out of the brains they were born with, all the common sense. Or you become a rebel. You can't learn at all. You're anti-religious because religion was crammed down your throat. Or you become a little wind-up Christian. You see them all over the place. And they can become so godlike in their own mind, they're even going to forgive Jim Baker. Is that his name, Jim Baker, is it? Yeah. They're going to forgive him, right? That's the power. That's why. Go ahead, your question.
I was going to ask you, is there any such thing in your mind as a good teacher, then? Or is there any real need for a teacher?
There's very little real need for teachers. Except when the student's ready, the teacher should appear. But he doesn't appear before the student's ready. That's what's wrong with the school system. You push knowledge on children. I tell you that a child at 10 years old that never read or write, never saw an alphabet, you can teach him, if he's interested, everything he needs to learn in 6 months, where it took you 5 years through kindergarten and God knows what, and still he doesn't learn it. I found that with my son, too. He couldn't read when he was 9, but he got interested in, Mad Magazine. And he got so interested in the magazine, he taught himself to read. That was simple enough. He had the motivation, didn't he? He's been doing it ever since. Now he has a very big business. He's only 22 years old. He has tremendous knowledge in many, many areas. He's self-motivated, see? And that when you praise people, when you condemn them, when you lure them with knowledge and teach them to be prideful and tell them that they must learn, study to show thyself to be approved in the Christian principle. If you're ridiculed or pressured, you're going to be a garbage collector if you don't study and work hard. And if they push up too much knowledge on you too soon, I know that you're interested in learning what I have to say, but I don't want you to learn me. I just want you to hear what I have to say, and let's have fun talking. Is that fair enough? That's going to be easy on you, isn't it? And then I'm going to lead you to where you're supposed to begin. Now, where are you? From what I have said this evening, where are you supposed to begin? Let's see if I can get it. Oh, wait. I've got 1 minute now. Tick, 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 tick. Where are you supposed to begin in this journey through life? Anybody picked up on something here? Huh? Well, anybody? Stand up if you want to. Okay, there's a lady right back there. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, you don't have to give your name. Just say, little old winemaker, me.
At the beginning?
You could just look at me. Where do you think we begin? From what I've said.
At the beginning.
Well, yeah, I know the beginning, but see, now do you know what you're saying? Where is the beginning? How do you begin this journey into life? From what I've said. Come on now, let's get... There's a gentleman, there's a lady right back here, okay? Yeah, we're ready? Are you ready for this one?
Well, I guess from the time you're born.
No.
Wrong answer.
You want me to tell you? Someone's going to tell me. From what I've said, where do you begin? All right?
Here and now.
Here and now, but see, you've missed the point. Now I'll tell it to you. The gentleman with the glass.
Rephrase the question, would you please, so I can...
Well, from the information I've given to you about knowledge.
Yes.
I don't know, I meant to talk to you about something else this evening, but it just came out this way, so excuse me, I have to do what he says, you know what I mean? Where do we begin this journey to the understanding self? The unfoldment of the real person rather than the cultured identity.
Well, from what you said, when you're ready, the teacher appears. So it's something that you acknowledge that you're ready for.
Okay, it's close, but let me tell it to you since no one's picked it up. By realizing that knowledge isn't the answer. See, you've always thought that knowledge was the answer, right? And therefore, because that was a lie, you followed that. And you always doubted people seem to get ahead with knowledge and make a lot of money. They seem to be the go-getters, the ones that succeed in life. They're not. You should see the end of their life. It's tragedy. It's tragic. There's as many people snorting dope and coke on top as those who tried and never made it. And the sin is just as much a sin for trying and failing, for trying and succeeding, because success is failure, and failure is failure. The very fact that you are tempted to bite the apple, you bite it, there's no guarantee that you'll make it. And you swallow it, and the spirit of that knowledge gets inside you, and that's the spirit you follow all of your life. Remember, the principles of trauma is this, is that in human life, unlike animal life, we have a spirit that makes us, and a spirit that corrupts us and takes the spirit's place. A corrupted person has an opposite character, opposite person. He's unkind, he's cruel, he's mad, he's insane, he's confusing, instead of the opposite. If you had the right spirit, right? You see it. It's not a chemicals. The chemicals don't produce this phenomenon of murder and killing and rape and violence and torture. This is just the opposite of good. So that when you become violated by being seduced by knowledge, and knowledge is a seduction. It is the first and foremost seduction. It was the first man fell to it, and we've been falling to it ever since. And when the first man fell to it, and the whole human race spread from that point, through one man's sin, and the whole human race came into existence. Well, we forgot. There's a funny thing about understanding. If, for example, you really understood what I was saying to you, and your life began to take on a new motion of the soul, and your conflicts disappear, and you start to grow and glow in the dark, the first time something would tempt you, the first time something would upset you, you become angry and judgmental. Sin, another form of pride, right? Knowledge is a form of pride. There's the emotion of anger, that's the form of pride. But it would pull you away from this dimension of knowing things without knowing why you know. And when that happens, you would forget everything I taught you. You wouldn't remember anything. And you'd think I was a jerk. You'd be so threatened by what I was saying, you probably want to run somewhere, hide. Go join a religion or something, where there's lots of knowledge. Follow? And I found people also who start with me and do very well. Their whole life changes, and they think to themselves, gee, this is wonderful. I keep saying there's no need to go anywhere to learn. The journey is within. You discover how to discover, and it's never ending. It's eternal life. And it leads you to the spirit that created you. But they get ambitious for knowing. Their pride enters in again, and they start going back to church, and they start studying the chapter and having a teacher, and fall flat on their face again. And they forget. Then they become a Mohammedan or Christian or whatever it is they become. They get caught up in the religion, and their whole life falls apart. And they forget everything I've said. Now, the reason why the world never understands Christ, the world killed him for it. Socrates had a very great insight. All the people who had great insight were persecuted by their countrymen. It's because the kind of personality that evolves out of sin through learning and studying and culture. I've always said civilization rises when man falls. It's culture that rises. I said that wrong. When civilization falls, man is civilized when he listens to his original knowing and falls from it. But he becomes the substitute for that. Knowledge, comes to fill the void left by the sin of pride. Because once you're separated from the ground of your being, then you're empty. You're hopeless, you're fearful, you're guilty, you feel stupid, inadequate. And you fill it by compensating with its nearest equivalent. In this particular case, the compensation for not understanding, for being upset and prideful and being separated from knowing who you really were and what you're going to be, is knowledge. But the more knowledge, the more suffering, the more troubles you produce. The more troubles you produce, the more the troubles themselves tempt you to be angry with them. And your mind races for knowledge, answers, but only from the unconscious, from all the bits and pieces of information that have assembled there, from all the prejudices and the deceitfulness and the confusions that lie there. These rise to the occasion, and your life is a mess. We'll continue this subject in our next segment. But I would like to remind, half an hour passes very quickly, doesn't it? And it really should go on for hours and hours and just forget about commercials. But we have to do this because we are not doing very well. The audience don't seem to be responding as quickly as I would like. And so I just like everyone out there who appreciates what this man is doing to encourage me to be able to do it. I'm going to do it with your money. I can't do it with my own. It's just a matter, it's like business. The money comes in, I pay the bills, and I can stay on. And just, you pay your light bill and the lights stay on, you know what I mean? So please, if you don't wait too long before you decide that you like where I'm coming from, and support the program. We have How Your Mind Can Keep You Well book, and cassettes too. And the announcer is going to give you the information on how to order those cassettes, and the cassettes contain the information on how to give up knowledge. It doesn't mean to say you're going to be stupid. It's stupid. It's knowledge that makes you stupid, believe it or not. Knowledge is a form of ignorance. So tomorrow we'll continue this subject, and we'll get a little more deeper into the ramifications of learning too much. Thank you very much, and join us in the next program.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Yes, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. And this is a continuing program in a series, the second one, actually. And we've been speaking about knowledge. I didn't really mean to start on that subject last night, but this isn't planned. And I think it's much better that it be impromptu, that we have a genuine flow of dialogue between myself and my audience. But I was saying that knowledge is the problem, it's not the solution. And that's a very shocking concept to an educated society. And that will lead to gasps of dismay. This man wants us all to be ignorant. Now, I have knowledge in my brain, and I speak to you with this knowledge in my brain. I have words, that's knowledge. Dada, that's knowledge. Mama, that's knowledge, it's memories. Except this knowledge is not motivated by, it's not ordered. The ideas do not come together as a result of some kind of selfish stimuli or a presence of a person manipulating those bits of information for their own good. Yeah, I used to be a hypnotist, you know that. And I can make a person's knowledge work for me beautifully. I can make them think that black is white and green is pink, and I can start taking candies from babies. The media knows it. The people that rule know that they've got knowledge and prejudices and selfishness and fear and anger, and all they have to do is press these buttons, and this knowledge comes together and serves them. and their will on earth as it is in hell. And that's why you have your life is a living hell, because you are always being motivated by people and by forces, and your thoughts come together by means of those forces that you cannot see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my subconscious mind isn't subconscious to me because it's all plain to me. I don't know one thing and it being separate from what I really feel underneath. Mine are both the same. See? You got two forces working. You have something you know is right. Then you got something that says, but you're wrong about that. Oh, I should do the right thing. No, you shouldn't. It's like, it's like Donald Duck with the good guy and the guy with the halo around him and the devil, right? You're separate from pretty soon you give in to those subconscious forces so much that they begin to take form in your thoughts. And you begin to think it's you that's thinking and you that's being served. And you that wants the marijuana and the self-destructive things and all the friendships of all the wrong people. And every time you make a mistake, the mind begins to rationalize. And that rationalization is an excuse, of course, but it becomes your truth. Now, when I see something, I'm motivated by something which is just as unconscious to me as your unconscious is to you. See, there's two unconsciousnesses. There's two of them. One is below, dark, your dark side, and one is above, and I'm in the middle. You're in the middle. Now, what the whole trick of life, the secret of life, is to learn to listen to Donald Duck's better side, right? Got it? And not to this dark one. Because every time you listen to this dark one and take your impulses and your ideas and your beliefs, your illusions, and your knowledge, because that's all part of it, that you're motivated by it to serve, you're being constructed, your mind and your body is being downgraded or degraded, dehumanized, to serve another source of creation, which is not really, it's destruction, really. That's why you see much destruction everywhere around you, don't you? See, so the idea is to learn to discover things and learn to have faith. What did the Bible say? The righteous shall live by faith? Where does faith come from? Faith comes from listening and trusting the revelations that appear to you when you move toward the light, and learning to go to war and to mistrust your unconscious, subconscious, dark-sided self, selfish self. Yes, ma'am.
Roy, it appears almost...
Am I making sense?
Yes,
is the questions in line with what I'm saying?
Yes. It appears almost that you're like in a catch-22 situation, which is like where I am. Now, I'm learning that part of me that directs me properly. But yet I am still pulled to an old home place, an old illusionary comfort zone.
Right.
Like I don't quite trust that yet, even though it appears...
But your dark self and your selfish self, the self that was born, that sprang out of the environment of tease and temptation and pressure and learning too much too soon, out of which the pride grew. This part of you doesn't trust what is real and true. It mistrusts that and trusts what is not true and illusionary and comforting and deceitful and what appeals to selfishness and what makes you feel good about yourself. See? There's a side of you, see now, marvel not, Christ said, that you have to lay down your life to pick it up and that you must die and be born again. Because this side of you is born of this earth. It's born of temptation. It's born out of sin. Because as I said in my last discussion, that when you experience trauma of any kind, even in this very day, take a young man who goes to church in the morning and does the usual good things and has a good two shoes, and he's respectable, he has a nice business suit, and he goes to Christian school, and then he goes out and gets in the wrong crowd. Next day, you don't recognize him. Next day, he's coming from a different place. And as time goes on, you're going to see how his physical form and his mannerisms degenerate to take form around what has taken up residence in him through the trauma of his taking dope or being peer pressured into doing something he shouldn't have done. Now, see what I'm saying? Now, this side of you has been growing in you all your life and been nurtured and encouraged by the wickedness of your teachers and your preachers, your parents, your friends. They've all encouraged this in you because they are afraid that have you ever wondered why Jesus was crucified? Have you ever wondered why a good man, when you read the scripture, when I was a kid I wondered, why did they kill this man? What was wrong with him? He heals the sick. He says, love each other, don't hate each other. Whoop, there it is. Seek the kingdom of understanding within you and forget about, don't listen to the scribes and Pharisees. They're full of baloney and knowledge. See what I'm saying? Listen to yourself, they're saying. Be true to yourself, he's saying. Don't react to the stresses because you won't be able to be true to yourself. You can't ride two horses. You can't respond to one master and the other at the same time. Make up your mind which one. See? Learn to trust in what you know is right. He came to bring you back to that original trust. It came to bring you back to the knowledge that you've forgotten. Remember yesterday I say, when you become violated and corrupted, you literally forget a very special kind of knowledge. This kind of knowledge I'm trying to bring you to, it's not in the brain. You can't find it in books. You hear what I'm saying? I'm trying to bring you back to remind you, and we are so guilty. We're so guilty that once you become guilty, this knowledge becomes a threat. And knowledge in whom this knowledge dwells, this other kind of called understanding. This light shines through this people, even in innocent children. It's a threat. That's why they kill people. The people in this world do not understand men like me. They do not understand men like Socrates or Christ or even Buddha. They do not understand, and the forces, the powers that be, that turn men into beast men, the devil's pawn. They turn them and mold them and dehumanize them, see, with all these offerings, the knowledge of good, the knowledge of evil, the knowledge that builds pride and displaces identity and creates a kind of being that serves the wrong God and is rewarded with some kind of bizarre excitement called life. And indeed, we go off looking for excitement. You find yourself grubbing in the dirt for this excitement, to get close, to find that spirit of your embrace, to surrender, to submerge yourself through pleasure, through all the forbidden things. And knowledge is one of those forbidden things. I'm not saying you can't learn and have knowledge in the right way, but we've all been violated by knowledge. We've been pressured to learn, to study, to learn scriptures. We've had religion shoved down our throats, and also academic knowledge shoved down our throats. It's produced the rebel, the conformist. Neither one of them are any good. See, both of them are dying souls. I'm saying to you that we have to give up trusting in this part of us that you know that when trusted will only create great conflict. And it's a war between instinct, which has now risen as instinct. It's not even instinct because it's not the instinct of an animal. It's not even the instinct of an animal. It's lower than an animal. It will take you much lower than the instincts of animals. As you see, human beings, animals don't do things to each other that human beings do. It's a journey. You're moving towards the spirit of it, the fulfillment, the completeness of the kind of being that is the mirror image of that spirit and that will serve it and is rewarded. Your soul becomes rewarded. And that's why you must trust. You must believe. You can't doubt the self that you've always followed. But you have to, through experience and through suffering, you know this can't be trusted. And the beautiful thing about this message is that I'm saying, look at me, see where I'm coming from. You see my words are not coming from below, and I'm not reading books, and I haven't studied a message the night before and written a speech. That my words are being formed from within and above. Not perfectly, maybe not as eloquently, and one day it will be, given enough opportunity of expression. But you can hear where I'm coming from. Even if you can't completely understand what I'm saying, you see the light. I'm transparent, and you see a God talking to you. And your own mind begins to open up and say, yes, I see where this man is coming from. And I believe. What did you think they saw in Jesus? That very same thing. They saw a man who was transparent. And they saw understanding. They saw understanding, and they were touched by it. It was what their soul longed to see but never could. No one could remind. Have you ever had someone's name and you couldn't remember their name? Yes, I remember your name. He said, Joe Schmo. Oh, yeah, I remember. You know it was right when you heard it. But you couldn't. It was on the tip of your tongue until he mentioned it. You couldn't have thought of it. But then when he mentioned it, he said, that was right. I do remember now. If he's given another name, you know that wasn't his true name, right? Understanding is very much like this. You need a person who loves you, who is transparent, who doesn't have that same knowledge with ego that blocks out that light, that is not offended, as most people are, by your own desire to know. See, because they ridicule you. If you have, how many people in this audience have actually thought, when they heard me on the radio and watched me on TV, you've actually thought to yourself, yes, I used to think like that, or I think like that. How many people like that? But you never heard anybody say it. And because you never heard anybody say it, you thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
And therefore, because you were crazy, you didn't express it and you never lived it.
Sitting here now, it's hard to express because there's always that fear
Right.
that maybe I'm going to sound stupid or maybe I'm going to be wrong.
Go ahead and do it. Sound stupid.
You just did. But I see what you're saying.
I
You're
don't think you
saying
sound-
the learning, or this process, or for the lack of no other words to use here, is just the being tempted to follow the dark side, follow it, suffer the conflict, and through that you realize...
You still think, because of your training, where the spirit of knowledge made you doubt the spirit of understanding that you had in your youth. You knew more when you were born. The minute you were born, you knew more then, and you had more potential then than you do now. You only have death to look forward to, and suffering, and a miserable existence, and the doctors, and the psychiatrists, and the straitjacket people.
Just like I've been living in this house all my life.
And you've been listening to the
And
wrong,
now
serving the...
someone's told me that this house is not where it's at. I won't know that until I take a step out of this house.
Now, what do we do? The first thing to do, yesterday, well, it's not yesterday for you, but in our last segment, I said, what is the first lesson? What have you gathered, if you're going to take this journey towards the light, what is it that you must conclude before you can take one single step? Can I hear it? I bet you forgot already. Come on now, let's see if we can... I gave you the answer. Huh?
Lack of knowledge.
No, not lack of knowledge.
Get rid of
No, not get rid of knowledge.
Don't look
See, it won't come to you right, will it?
learn it. Something like that.
No, see, it doesn't, and it does, unless you've got the right combination, you don't see it. Is to realize that knowledge is not where it's at. And don't doubt it. Don't be afraid not to learn anymore. Be carefree. Don't be afraid not to study the Bible. Although one day you will. I'm not forbidding you, you understand. Don't be afraid not to pick up books. But let your mind be free and trust that you will know when there is need to know. Or that you'll be led to thumb through New Dimensions magazine. I couldn't resist it. See, we have a sense of humor up there. Do you understand that you trust in the process and know that the reason why you are suffering is because you doubted that this process, all you can be and all you will need to know will come from you naturally, like a innocent babe. The righteous shall live by revealed knowledge, knowing when you need to know, and not just stuffing yourself with facts and not even know what the facts are for. When you want to know something, Then you can pick up the instructions, and then the instructions mean something to you. But meanwhile, throw the instructions away. Try to figure it out for yourself. It's much better that way. And then when you get stuck, whoop, where did I put those instructions? Then it means something, because it means you want to understand. The understanding doesn't come until you're interested. But you're fixated to knowledge right now. You're fixated, you, having been teased and pressured, have abandoned your birthright. And now you have a birth wrong. See? And you've forgotten that there's another way to know things, except that you try it harder to remember and to learn and to worry facts into order. And I tell you, as long as that's going on, you are drawing upon the Spirit. You are serving, evolving the life, yes, of that Spirit that did it to you. I had to wind that one down, but go ahead.
I had a question because I've been very knowledge-oriented, and I'm resisting the temptation to read all the journals, to keep current in my field and to file them away.
What's your field?
Medicine, nursing. And I'm trying to experience in my life the inner knowing or answers so that I can help my client from a better source than from a technical source, so to speak.
Well, the technical source is valuable. For the most part, it's too technical. Nursing and doctoring is much too intellectual. It's to the point of stupidity, to the point of utter and sheer stupidity, avoiding any human answer that's based upon common sense and faith. You see, it's totally on the technical, you see, totally on new inventions and new discoveries,
and new drugs,
and never looking at the cause of why this poor creature is, shriveling away in their bed.
What I'm feeling most acutely is an extreme sense of being very dull and not having any answers.
Beautiful.
And I'm trying not to compensate for it. But I was wondering, how long does that last? You talk about a transition period on the radio the other day, and I missed it, where you go through this dullness or
yes.
period
One
of
of the things you notice.
land.
One of the things you notice when you realize that knowledge is not where it's at, that you will know when it's time to know, but in a very special way that serves a different source. Who follows that? Now, unless you understand that and are willing to deal with the demon of temptation, to study, to learn, to become godly, spiritual pride through knowledge, the knowledge of good. Street knowledge is also knowledge, scientific knowledge. Whatever knowledge is, I mean, surely you've had enough fill of that to know that it doesn't, you're a university professor, you've got a bachelor degree, a BS degree in this and that, and still something's missing. And you've tried getting another BS degree, and you're so full of BS degrees, and you begin to see that it's beginning to get difficult, dry, and knowledge deadens. See? The knowledge kills, but the Spirit giveth life. See? The letter, knowledge, words are dead. And they really are. I knew that when I was a kid. Didn't you know it when you were a kid? I mean, there's nothing wrong with knowing things, but there's a time and a blending. See?
Explain it to kids.
Well, you don't have to explain it to them. They already know.
In school, they get all this pressure from parents and from teachers to learn, and they're not getting good
They're killing
grades,
them.
and they're trying to figure out what's going on. I need to make these grades.
10,000 kids a year commit suicide because they have murdered those children's souls.
How do you get their parents to back off of them?
I have TV programs like this that you guys support, because this is the only way I'm going to get across. We all know this. We, you, me, and everybody out there, we know you all know what I'm saying is true. But what are you going to do? Where does your commitment lie? Are you willing to lay it all down?
There's such a bombardment of garbage from everything. It's like you're up against a brick wall. You try to tell somebody something, they just you're just
resistance.
bombarded. You're just bombarded.
But
all
there's
the
a
time.
war. Don't you see the war between the spirit of understanding and the spirit of knowledge? The system, we call it. You see? And there's a war going on. They don't want you, the forces in this world, the powers that be, that want to go on being the powers that be, they're interested in education, yes, but like I said, it's not true education. And the churches are interested in an uplifting with knowledge of the Word, but it's not true knowledge. It's that knowledge that you keep learning but never coming to the knowledge of truth. It leads, you can learn away from the truth and build a big fat ego and pride in conflict with that truth.
They tempt you to learn, and then they make it difficult for you.
Well, so you've got to see there's a war going on between the spirit of understanding. I was talking to a senator one time, Senator Potts, I remember. He wasn't potty, he was from Oregon. And I went to see him about a matter. He seemed to be like a nice gentleman, old gentleman. And he was saying, he says, well, you know how common sense is going out of style lately? And he laughed about it. I said, Senator, do you realize what, you're seeing what I see, but you have to realize now that these people in Congress and these people in the Senate and these people in government, these liberals, they are at war with common sense. You don't have loyal opposition anymore, where you have two people in a company who has the good of the company at heart and throwing ideas on the table and come up with the best idea. You have egos at work, egos that want to see the country go in a very special way, and operating in that ego is that evil. And so therefore, when you are encountering, like you see in opposition to Ronald Reagan's ideas, some of them are great wisdom involved in the way he wants to deal with things. But you see, they're turning it all around and trying to make this man look like a bumbling idiot. See? And even in spite of all that, he's done better than they could ever do. If they ever get into power with all their cleverness and their smarts, they would ruin this country. And there's a feeling this country's going to be ruined when Reagan goes out and those people come in. You got the feeling, haven't you? Yeah. You don't know where it's coming from, but you got the feeling. See, so there's a war going on between common sense, and there's a war going on being waged for your souls, especially with the AIDS thing, where they're trying to make it all acceptable. AIDS is everybody's problem. Now it is, you see? And anybody who voices common sense opposition to this is immediately drowned out and pounced upon and pronounced insensitive and cruel and unhuman. You're overreactive, yes, what they call it, homophobic. I'll give them homophobic. Right? So, there's a war going on between common sense, reality, and the common sense people of this earth, and the people who are trying to take you away, make you doubt yourself. And it's like a psychic jujitsu. When you doubt yourself, you tend to fall to them and depend upon their answers, because doubting yourself produces a belief system in them. Do you understand that? And then you get your knowledge and you get your answers and you look to them and they become your authority. Anyway, I would like to talk to you not about the book that I was just given, but that's how to survive your parents. Okay, I want you to concentrate on this one, how your mind can keep you well. There's also another one called How to Control Your Emotions. And in this book is the secret of how to demesmerize yourself, unfixate. And we're going to talk about that on the next broadcast. And please keep the program on the air. I must emphasize that, as we'll never make it. Thank you very much, and join us again.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. You probably need my cassettes and my book before the program's over, because some of the things I'm about to say are very upsetting. They're not intended to be that way, but they will be. So be careful that you don't get traumatized by the shock of it. As a matter of fact, we've been talking about trauma and shock, and especially one concerning knowledge. And I've been saying that, to sum things up for the last 2 nights, that the whole education system is sick. Always has been, ever since I can remember, and beyond that. And anybody with any brains knows there's something wrong with the way they teach religion too. Not that what they're saying isn't bad. I'm not going to argue with a lot of the good things. They have lots of good things to say in religion. It's the way they go about teaching it to you. And that's precisely the point. They teach it to you. And they turn you into an educated dummy. I asked a friend of mine, he's now 62 years old, and he's been liberal all his life. And him and I have been fighting each other for many, many years. He had his system, and I had my system, and my system works, and his didn't. He's lost his family, everything's falling apart. So he came to see me. I said, you remember that time when we were having a discussion when I said that we need understanding and not knowledge? And we were talking about how we get our religious ideas and our morals. I asked you, how did you get your religious ideas and morals? And he said, well, my mother taught me. Oh, is that right? Well, your mother was a good mother? Yes. It turns out she isn't. He just discovered just the opposite recently. Thank goodness. Because he became his mother. He began to have the love and the understanding his mother had. You know where that came from. Anyway, to cut a long story short, because he dealt with life and people with a sort of the love and the desires of a woman, rather, the wisdom of a woman, and the compassion of a woman, which is not manly. Totally different world. Manly compassion, woman compassion, 2 different worlds. But anyway, long story short, I said, how do you know that it's wrong to steal? He said, well, my mother said so. I said, well, if your mother said 1 and 1 made 3, would you believe her? He said, yes, I guess I would. So there it is. I couldn't believe it, because there are actually people in the world who believe what they're taught. And that even if they're taught that 1 and 1, even if they're taught the right thing, they don't know it's the right thing. See? They don't know it's the right thing, because it could have been the wrong thing they were taught, and they would have believed it with equal gusto. Follow that? Now that is the way the world is. If they're born in Canada, in Borneo, they'd been a cannibal. And if they're born a Christian, they'd be a Christian. Just how the cookie crumbles. So now what use is that? If something's wrong with that. Now you ask me, well, how do I know 1 and 1 makes 2? Well, I know. I can see that it does. Now there's something in a human being that transcends them from being a little robot. A parrot can have a tape recorder and play back the tape recorded idea of what has been expressed. You know, 1 and 1 makes 2, 1 and 1 makes 2, Billy Polly. You know, and it's just a tape recorder can play. What are you? Just a reflection? What use is knowledge? What use is it to a tape recorder? What use is it to the parrot? What use is it that you are being, that who can teach you to reflect knowledge has taken you away from the understanding. In other words, with mankind, there are 2 sources of knowing things. And if we're taken away from one source, we come under the spell of that which took us away. And therefore another spirit, another intent, another purpose, another will is operating in us without us seeing it. And he even gives us the excuses why we do things. We didn't do them at all. Something willed itself through us and made us execute that with the knowledge it gave us. And then it gives us the excuses to cover our tracks, right? Who understands me? All right, now, that sort of summarizes the things that I was saying. And I was saying, let's pose the question again and get you guys involved. See if you can remember it, but see if you can understand it. Remember? Yeah, I told you to forget. That's good. Because okay, that's good. But I have some good thoughts too, but I never try purposely to remember exactly what I said, so it comes out more polished the next time. Because if the minute I start to remember what I said, it will come out from like the rumination of a cow. See, it does nothing new. I'm adding only some more stomach juices to it. Nothing new. Don't be afraid to forget what you said. See, because your soul was, the moment you start to remember your own cleverness, then you will draw on your own cleverness. And then as you do that, you forget. You forget what you really need to know. The journey stops. So I'm not afraid to forget, and I'm not afraid it doesn't come out quite the same each time. Because every time I say something, if I'm guided by the Spirit and I'm not drawing from below for my own cleverness, for my own pride's sake, and polishing it up so I should look good in your eyes, see? Smooth. Then it is the spirit of understanding that passes through me, and as it passes through me, it draws the words together in a very special way. And then, you see, the words come together. In the same way, when you are motivated by emotions and greed and your own cleverness and your own worry and the knowledge that you gather to implement your own will on earth, see, there's another spirit there that you cannot see, another intelligence that's operating that impinges itself upon your unconscious. And that you think that these ideas that come to you, you see, it's like going to the Las Vegas, and when you it's called beginner's luck, and then you go to the gambling tables and something says to you 2, 4, 8, 6. So you take your money out, 2, 4, 8, 6, 2, 4, 8, 6, the winner. You think you found something, right? You've fallen from faith and you've taken the laws of chance. See, you're already fallen. You've been tricked to follow the laws of chance under the animal system. Greed. You think, oh, you found some insight. And you do it again. It does it again. And then from that day on, it doesn't say that anymore. And you're looking in your own brain trying to find. And you lose. Is that right? Yeah. You lose. Who understands what I just said? It happened to me. I'm only using that as an example of how the Spirit is there, and it did it to every one of you. How many? May I see a show of hands? How many people? Plenty, right?
Yeah, with me it said this might be God's way of helping you out of your.
You're something like that. Yeah. Perfect excuses. I tell you what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of putting a dime in the slot machine at Las Vegas because there'll be headlines if I win, minister wins $1 million. No, go ahead now. Yes.
Is this the same sort of thing?
Oh, this lady back there because the microphone was way back there.
My question is, I've
Careful,
been
she'll
hearing
eat
about
that. She'll eat that microphone. Put it in close.
The spirit, thanks.
Go ahead.
This spirit that you talk about, this evil force or this dark force, it seems to me that since I have experienced it, the more I've experienced it, the more I understand what you're talking about.
Of course.
Now, for the people that have not experienced it in such a degree, probably couldn't understand
what
you're talking about. So therefore, you must come from a sort of a dark place to really understand.
Right.
I mean, I'm not laughing.
Having
but you
sampled
see,
it.
at one time, I was full of fear and decided to play upon my fear, with greed, lust, whatever, to get what and all that you've been talking about, I can kind of relate to it because I've experienced the negative side.
And it goes nowhere.
It just goes to death and destruction, from what I can see.
That's right.
From what I can see.
Well, that's just a comment. I don't have any comment on your comment. I'm glad, but I know that the people in the audience who are watching this program, the reason why they could recognize what I'm saying is the same reason why you've recognized what I've said, and that will say from now onwards, is because you have taken the journey in the opposite direction, but never had anyone articulate what those forces were that were playing with your brains. You've sensed this dryness of knowledge. You understand the pressures of the school system and the church system and everything else, and see this is a loveless way of inoculating with self-righteousness and which doesn't lead anywhere except down to you know where. And so you sense there's something wrong. I mean, after all, some of you have given up knowledge, going to church. Some of you feel have become atheists. Some of you become alcoholics. If this is God, you say to yourself, if this is God, if God does this to a person, and if these people represent God, I don't want anything to do with them. I'm just going to go to the dogs. See? And I'll be more honest. At least I'll drink and I'll smoke and I'll wench and I'll do all these things. At least it's natural to me. But there's a strange thing what happens. It's a strange thing that any attempt to put into a person righteousness produces an animal nature. Who understands what I just said? In other words, to make your behavior fit some knowledge pattern of how Jesus is supposed to be. Or, see, in other words, pressure to make you learn and to be wise and to be clever is what produces the ego. But ego always produces the animal. We have an ego animal. In other words, we have a spiritual nature, which will appear when we give up our ego. I'd like to use the term bright nature. There's another nature that we know nothing about. This nature, we only sense it in terms of conflict. Our potential is within us, but every time you respond to some pressure, some temptation of any kind, especially those ones we are speaking about now, to become religious and to become smart and to become ambitious, and all those pressures, pardon? Successful, right. The moment you respond to that, whether it's with your will or against your will, let's say somebody says, you have to accept Jesus Christ. See, and everybody pounces on you to learn to accept Jesus Christ, and you start to resent it. Then you start to feel guilty. Then perhaps out of the shock of resenting it, which now you've already fallen, haven't you? You've already fallen because you start to resent the pressure. And that's pulled you away from who you once were. Now it introduced a spirit of pride. Now you're empty. Now you've forgotten. Are you getting the point? Go ahead. Right over here.
You described me to a T.
I am?
Exactly. I was studying last 6 months, studying religion. And all of a sudden I became very prideful.
And lustful.
I didn't.
Lustful yet?
Everything that you mentioned just a minute ago.
Not the lust?
No, not the lust. The ambition, the pride. And,
did you have any strange desires stirring in you?
I changed. And I thought religion is supposed to be not do these things.
You became more sensual, didn't you?
I became like I knew everything, you know. It was weird.
And it had conflict.
Pride.
How many people?
Conflict, yes.
How many people here? How many people know?
Guilt.
Whereof I speak, guilt. How many people, as the result of their spiritual training or the pressure to learn, have found themselves becoming more animal, more lustful, more confused, more cruel, and lost. And how many people? Can I see a show of hands? Good. You see? Now, in other words, the very thing those preachers or those teachers or those well-meaning parents, not so well-meaning, because they don't understand the forces that are driving them, you see. But the very minute they put those unloving pressures to teach you something which should have been patience to wait for you to discover for yourself or help you to discover it for yourself when you were ready to see it, see. But those impatient pressures are not the spirit of good. They're not the spirit that's concerned for you. That's a spirit that's going to destroy the real you and create a replica. A replica you that is Christian, educated, but it doesn't serve this. It doesn't serve the purpose for which it was created. It serves the purpose for which it was recreated. Who understands what I'm saying? So that's the reason why all the educated people aren't. Most of them, you go to Harvard, and you go to Stanton, and they're all up there in the dormitories.
That's right.
Yeah. And you know why they snort? Because it helps them to forget guilt. The moment you start to become that kind of person, and it starts to evolve in you, this prideful person with knowledge starts to evolve, and now you start to feel guilt and anxiety. You've got to get rid of the conflict, because you cannot learn any more. You cannot become more prideful, because now you're prideful. How did you get prideful? Through the...
What do you do?
You understand what I'm saying? See, but you've got to get rid of the conflict.
Do you just not learn it then? I mean,
No.
you just don't study?
Well, yes. Well, ask the question again in a minute as I proceed with the and hold it. You can ask it again. Maybe I'll answer it. Do you see? There's an addiction to knowledge. Because knowledge, if you were, I like to always go to the marijuana and into the cocaine stuff. If you are corrupted by cocaine, okay, the spirit is like a homing salmon. Your trauma tends to remember the circumstances of its undoing or its doing. Its undoing is also its making, its recreation. Did you understand what I just said? In other words, you change from one person that you're undoing into another person through the corruption of the trauma. So that if you were violated by drugs, the shock came by people pressuring you to take drugs, you would come back to drugs in order to, pardon?
To relieve the pressure.
To relieve the pressure of conflict, one, to escape into the drugs, and to renew the spirit of the drug. The spirit that get into you through the drugs, you remember that's where it came from. And you're drawn back to it like a homing salmon, to renew yourself, to remember who you are, but to forget who you were. You see what I mean? Because who you were, it nags you as conscience. So the problem with knowledge is exactly the same thing as with drugs. That once you become violated, pressured to learn, pressured to take religion, the spirit of that, the intent, the wickedness of the teacher, the wickedness of the preacher, who pretends to be there for your good. You saw it at the moment you saw the hypocrisy. Remember when you saw the hypocrisy of the teacher? It was not human, the way they were pushing you. Who understands what I'm saying? All right. You remember that moment, and you got very angry one time, very resentful. All of a sudden something changed, snapped. And now you could no longer be the person who could unfold from inner revelation to greater revelation, to be a whole person by the evolution of the spirit, you see? But now you have been violated, something pulled away from realizing, pulled away from this special kind of knowing, so you actually forget for a moment, and into yourself, into your spirit comes this other spirit. And this other spirit has no tolerance for understanding. Now, in other words, because understanding is the light, and the spirit of darkness is like the vampire. And therefore, you can't shine light on it. Some people get to the point of being so decadent they have to wear sunglasses because the sun reminds them of being a light. Haven't you know all the guilty wear glasses, all the entertainers? And right? Going to look cool. What they're saying is they can't stand the light. It symbolizes. So even the symbols they become afraid of.
I've seen that happen during meditation. It's like synonymous to when you're standing outside and you can't stand the sunlight. Only this time I was meditating and my eyes were closed, and it was like...
The light was on.
Yeah.
Yes. But you see, we're talking about a spirit, an identity, an id entity, id entity, it's a play on words. Id entity. We have an id entity or an identity, see? And this person or personality, the mask, the personality, this is the false personality, springs up around the original trauma. And if it was drugs that corrupted you, you'd be into drugs and drugs would be into you. While you're into drugs and drugs were into you, you'd be forgetting the guilt of it. But then there'll be more guilt because whatever you've left behind, whatever you've forgotten is the truth. And the truth is trying to make you remember, but your pride doesn't want to remember because pride can't exist with truth. See, so therefore it survives, and it survives by escaping. Now, knowledge is a perfect seduction because it replicates understanding, an evolution of something, a movement towards something, a hope. Except eventually you see it as a hopelessness. Eventually, as you travel far along that path, the conscience and the conflict and the obvious mistakes and the obvious excuses for those mistakes and the confusion you cause in your family, and that you're driving your kids to drugs by sending them along the same path of success as you are, right?
Yeah.
Who understands me? Good. See? Now here I'm saying something that these educated dummies, and I welcome any kind of platform discussion, not edited. Because if they edit you, then they can come out looking better. But I welcome any kind of discussion with the educators of our time, but they never have stepped forward, so it's unfortunate. 27 years I've been saying this, and I haven't had a taker yet. Because there's a fear. There's a fear on the part of the spirit in those people. They can't. What happens when a man like myself meets one-to-one in a fair fight, not the way the media does it, because never fair. But when the spirit of understanding meets the spirit of knowledge, when you really are sure of yourself and you already know from where you're coming from and you know where they're coming from, when you reach that stage, their brains turn into a fish fry. Because it's the same thing. What happens, it's going to happen, we were speaking before about when you meditate and you feel stupid. The minute you realize that knowledge is not where it's at, and it's a relief. If you really realize, to know it is one thing, intellectually. And you can walk out of this office and this building and you could be thinking about what I was saying and you hear me and you know what I'm saying is right, but all of a sudden something clicks. Aha. Yes. That's what it is. It's called, my friend calls it the aha. He's a Stanford professor, by the way. Aha. Experience. That is something brand new. The penny drops, we call it. We have colloquialisms for that, haven't we? The penny drops, and that's how I want the knowledge of, all the knowledge of your life, the scriptures, verses and chapters that you were forced to learn, which are in your brain by virtue of the fact that you were traumatized to remember it. See? Will now pass through your brain for review in its own time. And all of a sudden, a scripture will leap out at you. Ah, wow. And for 3 or 4 days, it may come back and have different meanings. Wow. Ah. And you lose interest in reading the Bible for a while, for months, years on end. You got enough in your head already to last you for 20 years, for a lot of people. But all of a sudden, the knowledge comes back and you understand it, and you feel fresh and new, like the wind of the Spirit. And then you start to forget the verse and chapters. That's the interesting part. I have some verse and chapters in my brain, and they come back to me sometimes not very well quoted. I'm not afraid for that. But I am beginning to understand. After all, when understanding comes, knowledge should be no more. Because I'll see it again. I don't have to remember it. I'll see it again, and every time I see it again, it's newer. It tells me more about itself. Who understands me? Okay? I want you out there, these people already got this, to get the book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, and the announcer is going to talk to you about some cassettes of how to meditate and give up all your knowledge and become stupid. Because through stupid, on the other side of stupid is smart. Because anybody who thinks they're smart is stupid, and anybody who sees they're stupid is smart. Yeah, okay? You can hear me on radio here in Los Angeles, 9 o'clock in the morning, at 870 on the dial. And if you want to be in the studio audience, you didn't give me the sign. I have to remind my own director here. He sees face red. If you want to be in the studio audience, you put your tongue back in your head. You want to be in the studio audience, please call the foundation after you listen to the radio program, 559-3711 during the daytime. And of course, we're going to continue this program tomorrow night and get the material, support our program. We're a religious organization, but we don't want your soul. We want to liberate you from organizations. You belong by not belonging. Just support us. That's all we want you to do. Thank you, and ta-ta for now.
The Foundation of Human Understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And we've been talking about the cause of our troubles, which is the pressure of those unloving authorities in our life, pressuring us to accept Jesus, or Moses, or Muhammad, or Pythagoras. It doesn't matter. Who's Pythagoras? I forget. Anyway, but it doesn't matter. It's the pressures, those unloving, cruel, incessant pressures that violate our first estate, violate the process of naturally unfolding like a flower and going from understanding to understanding. And I've got a sign that says ask questions, and I'm so full of answers I forget that you have questions, so go ahead. So anybody has any questions about this process we were talking about? Anybody? Yes, let's go ahead.
How do you approach learning properly? I mean,
How do you,
after you've been traumatized by it?
well, is to stop resenting it. That's a good question. Did you hear what the lady said? No. How do we approach learning properly after we've been violated by it and have become addicted to it or had an aversion for it so that you couldn't learn? So you either have an addiction to learn, and then learning doesn't do you any good. It only makes you smug and stupid and makes you think you know it all and drives the kids away, right? And it doesn't work in your own life because there's no human understanding in it. Although you think you have all the answers, it's only because you think that you have all the answers. And as long as you're into your thinking, the answers elude you, the real answers. The question now is, how do we apply ourselves to learning correctly? Well, first of all, you must realize that knowledge is not where it's at, and that you must wait to understand, and that you must not resent not being able to learn, or not resent what learning has done to you, for which reason you became addicted and followed the path of pride, which led to your downfall and your utter confusion. See? and it's simply not resent the damage it's done. In other words, stop resenting the fact that you can't learn, because all that does, it awakens. See, resentment is a second cause, you might say. The first cause, if you just put it in Garden of Eden paradise terms, original terms, it's the fall from the paradise state to the exalted state such as a God has, pridefulness, right? And what was it? The peyote tree, the cocaine tree, see, the mind-expanding drug or fruit, forbidden fruit of knowledge. Now that's the original trauma. Doubting, the warning concerning that, of all the trees of the garden ye shall freely eat, except one, the knowledge of the tree of God, good and evil. That fruit you shall not touch it, for in the day that ye eat it thereof you shall surely die. Now comes the little snaky, silky, serpenty one, see, and says, just a minute, that's the way of becoming God. See, God's just testing you. He wants to see if you've got any courage. How do you think he became God? See, so if you're his child, he wants you to become God. He just wants to see if you're chicken. I'm just making something up. It seems like the argument is it's ironclad. See, and the first original trauma was reaching for the mind experience of, but now we're born into it. The whole human race is immersed. We now have forgotten this way of believing God. We've now have doubted. The first man has doubted God. The world closed. His inner eye was closed. Now, remember what it says? His eyes were opened, but his inner eye was closed. His senses opened up. And you notice how more sensitive you become, more open, and then the world rushes in, doesn't it? And you seek more and more experience because when you've lost the experience of the inner, when you've forgotten to unfold through the inrush, the infilling of the Spirit, so going from understanding to understanding, never doubting, always knowing, and knowing leading to more knowing, and knowing leading to growing from knowing, right? Fulfill faith without works sort of thing. Well, when that collapses, the inner eye closes, the world is forgotten. And here you are, this animal on this earth, and now that everything's reversed from DC, direct current, to AC. Now you get charges from the outside. Now you find yourself plugged in. Am I making sense? And now you're looking for excitement to keep you alive. And excitement stimulates your intellect. Haven't you noticed when you're excited, when you're stimulated, when you're tempted and teased and aggravated? The kids have to play loud music in order to absorb their stupid knowledge. They've got to keep themselves distracted all the time because they've got to keep the senses open to become who they are. But who they are is wrong. The self to see, and this self, when it is fulfilled by the infilling of the outfilling, see, we call it information, it's outformation. See, information would be from the truth. Outformation with knowledge, we absorbing a self. We're absorbing who we are. And we become more and more sensitive, and we have to be sensitive. That's why we take drugs, to amplify our senses. Drug addicts are all very sensitive to the... I stopped a guy on the highway one day. He bumped into the back of my car. And I got up, I said, "Excuse me, but you just bumped into the back of my car." I didn't realize I hadn't not acquainted with drug. And he's freaked out. It was kind of normal, but normal with a lot of freakiness to it, a lot of nervousness to it. And my son does a perfect imitation of those guys. But I realized that the slightest happening, they overreact to it, they go crazy. But they need the open senses. They need the senses amplified because they need to close the inner eye shut. Because the inner eye is the memory of who they are. It's the beginning, it could be the beginning of a new person. But the ego self, the ego animal self that has evolved, has no tolerance for this opening of the inner eye. We call it the third eye, right? Some people, they have, because it literally slays them in the spirit. Man is a spiritual being. Inside him, he's growing up to be either a reflection of the spiritual, the temptation, the spiritual evil, the brainchild of evil, or the brainchild of good. There are two forces represented. The Christ-like person, you see, and all of the betas and the tempters and all the scribes and Pharisees. Who were his adversaries? Not the alcoholics. They were the educated, the men of letters, the men of law, the men of learning. They were the ones that brought Israel to its knees. He said, don't listen to what they say, but don't be like them. What does he mean? They're trying to understand what they're saying, but don't imitate their way. Don't be a hypocrite. Live by understanding, not by all this false knowledge. Who's following me? Questions? Have I done you in with? I've given you so many answers. Way back there.
When you're talking about the affirmation and the senses, then if you want to go back to the inner eye, do you start withdrawing from the central input from the world?
What you do is you must realize that you're fixated. You're fixated either in a fascination with knowledge, which is creating conflict, because the more knowledge you get, the drier your life becomes, right? Until you don't even want to do your profession anymore. And yet you feel like you have to learn, because something tells you that if you don't learn, you're going to be a garbage collector. And then after a while, you don't mind being a garbage. You're better off being a garbage collector than having all this conflict. But then you go the opposite direction. You don't learn at all. You become a garbage collector, and you're not happy there either. See? Because some knowledge is necessary to live. No, the answer to the question, what does one do, is to become unfixated from the thought process. Because when the original sin, with that first inrush, the shock of people pressuring you to become something and making you the wrong person as a result of your reaction to it, your mind fell from its original state of knowing things on its own without learning it, where the understanding would have become learning, and it began to express itself as I do with you. Following me there? It fell away from this objective state, and it became subjective to the thought-feeling process. Are you follow there? In other words, the perfect state, the paradise state, is objective to thought. The spirit not involved in the thought process, but just sitting a little above it. And the thought process being subject to the revelations of that spirit. And the thought process producing an energy. The more you think of something, the more you feel like doing it, right? So the thought process produces its own motivation. And then it acts itself out in word and deed. And then once the flow is complete, there's a sort of a reward, a peace, because you've simply done what you know is right. What happens when you don't do what's right? When you react to stress and you become infilled from the outside, then you see the same process. You react, you feel, you think, your soul becomes traumatized, you get pulled into the flow, you doubt what you know is right. You doubt what you know is right, you get caught up in ideas. The whole purpose of that wicked thing on the outside is to make you doubt, to separate you from this marvelous process of becoming a whole and beautiful, bright-natured being. And when that happens, it happened to you when you were very small. You knew everybody was crazy, and they saw you watching them. And they made you think you were crazy for seeing they were crazy. and they started pressuring you to accept this or that. And you fell into that experience. And now you're locked into your thoughts. And now the outer eye is opened, the senses are opened, and in comes their identity. In comes all the things you don't want to remember. As you try to forget, and you get drunk trying to forget it. Or you get drunk trying to remember it. Drunk with music, things you stimulate yourself to remember. With music, you'll try to do your homework, so you have music blaring in your ears to quieten the nagging of the inhibitions of the conscience. You see, you become a coffee achiever. You drink coffee. Why does coffee do that? Because it has if you use coffee, it deadens the conscience, and it opens up the outer senses, and it makes you learn better. It makes you more subject to the stimulations of ambition, the spirit of ambition, and the fulfillments of ambition of the soul. Follow that? Following me? So what we have to do is to become objective to thoughts. Because when you're objective to thought, you're subject to truth again. You can think a thought, a crazy one, but at this point you won't be compelled to act on it. You can have a feeling, and the feeling can make you want to do something, but some strange reason you find that even though you got the feeling to do it and the compulsion to do it, something doesn't let you. Who understands me? Good. So when you're objective to thought, you're subject to the truth. When you're involved in thought, you're objective to the truth, in the sense that you're subject to the thinking, feeling process, and all of a sudden the senses open up, because the only way you can be educated, the only way you can know anything, the only way you can be fulfilled in anything is to open your senses wider and wider and wider, and so that everything, all the grab all the gusto you can get. You see? That your whole identity is collected like an animal from the external world you live in. And it's the life that leads to death. It's a compensation for the loss of from above. You make it up from below. Now, coming back to the question again. What do? We become objective. When we become objective, we realize that we've been tricked into thinking that knowledge is the answer, and also resenting the fact that we can't keep up with everybody else who seem to have... See, we're jealous, angry. Follow? We think we're stupid. You see all of this, and you stop resenting yourself. You stop resenting the person that did it to you, because it connected to your trauma is the fact that you resent the person that did it to you. The nun, the priest, the rabbi, the mother, the father. Yeah, the teacher. Right. The friend. It doesn't matter who. You resent the person. Had you not resented them, it could not have had this reverse life. You know why I know what I know now? I never resented the pressures, and therefore I retained my original innocence. Do you hear me? And that's what's speaking to you now. And I couldn't put it into words, but I was always different. I didn't know I was different because people acted like I did on the surface. But their nature was different from mine: cruel, callous, bickering, degrading. You know how people are. Selfish, greedy, backstabbing. You get to know them, and you can just know this dark side, this beastly side, this treacherous thing that looks like a decent human being on the outside, but it's something else on the inside. How many people know you? You're married to one of those, probably. See? It's a betrayer. And when you're different and you don't get caught up in there, they see you as an enemy. When you don't accept them as they are, and you can't accept them as they are, you see something's wrong. And they see that you see something's wrong. And they're threatened by your seeing. Remember, your light is an enemy of their reality. You understand that? Okay, now we're going to take more questions.
I feel like I was like you when I was young, and I saw other people as being cruel and unkind. And yet I thought something was wrong with me, so I tried to conform to
Yeah,
their
that's
way of
right.
being.
That was wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You doubted yourself.
I had a
See,
real-
people won't accept you as you are, because the way you are is the way they should be, which they are not. So the way you are makes them feel guilty. So when they feel guilty, they feel like there's something wrong with you, otherwise they wouldn't. Their logic is, you make them feel bad, therefore you're bad. See the logic? You make them feel bad, therefore you're bad because you make them feel that way. Because good people make them feel good. Lies. It's bad people that make them feel good. That say they're okay the way they are, make them feel comfortable, accept them the way they are. So therefore, when you come into the world, you have this original innocence and the original knowing, and it's like a light shining, and you don't understand why people shun you and think you're weird. It's because it's a war of the worlds. Their world. A little child goes into a classroom and immediately becomes a troublemaker. He hasn't done anything. He won't go along. All the other kids are little wind-up toys already. And they make fun of him because he's different. My son, he was in school when he was 10, 11 years old, and so they would do these sports, and they'd go into the showers, and he just didn't want to go into the showers with those other boys. So how many people felt that way? It's modesty. There's nothing wrong with a little modesty. And the boy called him a queer because he didn't want to go into the showers. He said, "You're calling me a queer, and I want to go to the teacher's office? You're showering with everybody else." Who's a queer? There's logic. The whole logic is turned around, you see.
I'm a teacher
You
right
are?
now, yeah. And
Well, bless my soul.
I have a certain sensitivity, I think, to a lot of the children that I don't see in other teachers. So
Isn't it nice? You want a job in Grants Pass? You want to get rid of the stupid system you're in?
I'd love to.
Why don't you talk to Gail at Grants Pass there?
I have my own kids, though. who
You
live here.
you teach your own kids?
No, but I don't want to leave my own kids.
Oh, I see.
That would be hard.
So you teach your own children and then schools also?
I'm a school teacher. I don't teach my own children. They're in public school.
Well,
But I wouldn't want to go to Grants Pass and leave my own kids.
no, I mean take them with you.
That's an idea. No, that's an idea.
No, she has her own kids too. She has her own children
You're
too.
my own
But she's
children, right.
kind of stupid to let some other teacher, who you
I'm-
know is a dumb
I'm-
jerk,
Oh,
to teach your
exactly.
kids, and you with a nice sensitive quality teaching somebody else's kids. That should be for your kids.
My own kids are suffering in the
And they're
system.
suffering, aren't they? Listen to this teacher. And you let them suffer. I want to punch you right in the nose right now. Right?
Yeah.
What are you doing letting them suffer for? Why do you let them go to school and you know it's no damn good for them?
I don't think I will anymore. If I can.
Don't you understand the school system is destroying the mind of your child?
It's creating great conflict in our children.
And they may never recover from it. Listen, I'm doing everything I can to help you guys recover from this. And I may not be around very much longer. I may be hanging on a cross soon. You never can tell. This system is crazy. With all its education, with all its idea of freedom, they cannot tolerate a man like me. They cannot. There's going to be some kind of, media, just like they did to Reagan. They're crucifying Reagan. And they can do it to the president. How much more can they do it to a man like myself if they want to? And all the idiots out there will believe it. They will slant all the information around so that they feed them this. I can watch the news, I can listen to what they're saying, and I can pick out the truth. I can see what they're doing. I can listen to the misinformation and get in my information. I can listen to you talk. And what you don't say tells me more than what you do. The pauses, the way you couch things. Well, I see what you're trying to avoid, but I see it. I see what you're trying to avoid, therefore I see what you should have told me. I'm very sensitive, and so are you. You people out there are not dodos. You can see what the news media is doing, and I'm very happy to say, I don't want to be political on this thing, but Mr. Reagan is very popular in spite of what the news media is doing. He's hurting his image in the world to be effective leader there, but I see.
You're not a threat.
Pardon?
You're not a threat to them. That's why they're not bothering you.
Right now, I'm not big enough. So they're
Right.
leaving me alone. I hope I die and go away.
Right.
Right, but
If you were a threat, you wouldn't be here.
no, they'd have the CIA finish me off or something, and make it look like an accident, like some guy, some nut. Because what I am doing, I'm threatening this whole system. Look, but I'll tell you this, the system is going to come crumbling down anyway. Sooner or later, and it's going to be soon. The whole country is crumbling because we don't know what's causing the crumbling, and they don't want to know. They've come up with more answers, more scientific experiments, more tests, more therapies. And it's getting bizarre. Their answers are becoming so bizarre that even the 3-year-old can see that these guys are weird. But they can't see that they're weird. And they impose this weirdness on the children. They impose this weirdness on everybody. They're going to destroy a lot of minds. Turn them into weirdos and homosexuals or whatever. We're going to be hearing from them pretty soon. Now, the question needs to be addressed again. I tend to get off on tangents a little bit. How do we undo what was done? How do we de-traumatize ourselves? We've got to defocus. And that's what the meditation's all about, by the way. At the end of the program, we'll talk about this. The meditation exercise is a concentration exercise where you unlearn, you undetach, you defocus. Your mind is focused on itself. I mean, your soul is fixated. You can't get out of, the soul cannot get out of a mind fix. You have thoughts going round and round in your head, and you're locked in on that. You gentlemen know what it's like to see a pretty girl. This beautiful form, this scintillating form walks by you. And every creature has a form. A snake has a form, an aura. And when you stand in the presence of a cobra, it gives off a cold and slimy feeling. But everything has a form around, an aura around it. This beautiful scintillating woman walks by. Its whole purpose is to captivate your attention, so as to funnel her will through you. That's how your will is fixated to something. That fixation permits that person's will to operate through you. That's why women have so much control over men. We'll continue this on in our next discussion. That went by very quickly, didn't it? Remind me what I said, if you can remember it. Fixation. Okay, radio program. If you people in Los Angeles can hear me on KIEV 870 on the dial, 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. If you want to be in the studio audience, then you call the Foundation of Human Understanding. The phone number will be at the end of the program. And I'd like to impress upon my viewers that we haven't had a lot of response. If I was Jim Baker, I'd have my $2 million and I wouldn't threaten anybody. Don't you see what I'm doing? I'm threatening you. I'm causing you to reflect. It's painful. You don't appreciate people like me who make you think and reflect upon your way of life, because none of us likes to be wrong. No one likes to be wrong. We all want to be right. So therefore, it's a little difficult attacking your ego and stroking it to get your egos to support this ego. All right? But tomorrow we're going to continue in the last of the series of knowledge versus understanding. And please get the book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, to teach you the stages of meditation so that you can unlearn and unfixate. Thanks for listening, and join us in the next program.
The Foundation of Human Understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to our program, and we're having a very interesting discussion the last 4 evenings on the subject of knowledge and pride and how it is opposed, the archenemy, actually, of understanding. And that when the media and the intellectuals discuss me, they all throw up their hands. They don't understand what this man is saying. This man's dangerous, but they don't know what I'm saying. How can I be dangerous if they don't know what I'm saying? You know, they do know what I'm saying. And when people listen to me on the television or radio, they also think I'm crazy. I don't know what this guy's saying, but they all get upset. What he's saying is stupid. And people get very upset with me. Didn't you ever get upset with me when you first heard me on radio? Some of you are very pleased, but some of you are upset right away. It's because instantly there's a part of you that recognizes something right about what I'm saying. And that's wrong. That part of you is assaulted, psychically assaulted. Even if you only heard a few words, you think, it in you thinks that it or him in me is mad. And that your whole world starts to crumble if you allow yourself to hear what I say to the conclusion, to its ultimate conclusion. You're going to feel tremendous anxiety. Your whole world is going to collapse. And some people are ready for that. They're ready to give up that world. They want it to collapse. Because only if it does collapse can this other truth that makes it collapse, the truth that busts your bubble, appear in its place. See? And I was saying now just a little while ago, and you can interrupt me anytime you want to, just put your hand up, and old Sleepy over here is going to... he gets involved. And he'll come over and stick that microphone right in your ear or mouth. And I said that the problem with us in our lives is that we are fixated to the thing that did us in. The drug addict is fixated to the thing that did him in. But the thing that did him in only did the real self in. And it displaced the real self, it did that in, and replaced it with a self that came out of drugs, that was behind the temptation the day he was tempted. It was the spirit of drugs. It was beyond it, the other side of matter, if you like, the other side of space. There's a space inside me, then there's this matter. On the other side of matter, there's something else lurking. And the big problem with it is, especially with women, and I'm not saying that women are the cause of all our problems in a sense, but I'm saying that women inherit a charm. Because remember, when paradise was lost, you not only had the spirit of knowledge. There's this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Let's say it's an apple or peyote. And she has this in her hand. And what do you have? You have the spirit casting itself into the woman. That's her beyond. The mind of a woman is different from the mind of a man. And incidentally, the mind of a woman must become like the mind of a man. Otherwise, the mind of the man becomes like the mind of the woman. And all hell breaks loose. See? You know, who understands that part? But see, how does the mind of the woman get into the mind of man? It got in because of the temptation to be prideful through knowledge. See that? But not only is this experienced through the fruit, because men have problems with food. Don't we all have problems with food? We do. Food is our number one problem. It sustains everything that's wrong with us. And women are in the kitchen looking for new ways to keep us happy. I put it in the bacon, and I fry it in the pan, and I never let you forget you're a man. Remember how that commercial goes? And so you see, you see the whole scene is knowledge. Women are motivators to support the pride of men, and men need a backbone. I always say that behind every great man there's a woman, but no one ever asked who's behind her. See? That spirit that men need in their pride, ambitious men need pushy women, because that's their motivation, their drive, the pressure to excellence. It also the involvement with her body and her spirit, so they don't have to feel guilty. You can always lose himself in the unconflicted nature of the female, lose himself mentally, emotionally, sexually, food-wise, every way. So in that trauma scene, you have all the elements of manipulation and power. The forbidden fruit. I tell you, if candy bars is forbidden in your home, your children will know to eat candy bars. And that's how their aberrant behavior is maintained, by eating Cadbury's chocolate, Nestle's milk bars. See, whatever it is you don't want them to eat because it isn't good for them, they will want it. Because that's the rebellious nature of pride, sustained by it and evolves through it and cannot exist apart from it. And all the elements, the food through which pride and desire to know, to forget truth, that one knowing, and to remember another knowing, to be filled with one's own self-knowing, prideful self-knowing, spiritual knowledge, intellectual knowledge, academic knowledge, even street knowledge, knowledge of good and evil. That is all connected with the body of a woman, as far as a man is concerned. So therefore the man that exists today came into existence because of all these elements that are, there's only one element, the subtleness of the serpent, the guile, that's the side of her which is her beyond, taking him away from his beyond and fixating on her. And she has all this electricity. Remember I said in my last program that a snake has a cold quality, and it makes you shudder when you come near it because it has a aura about it, cold-natured thing that it is, right? Cold-blooded thing. And but everything has an aura around, gives off a signal, all of its own, a presence. A woman has a presence within her that capitalizes on the sensitivity of man's. His eye open, his opened eye, his inner eye is closed, his outer eye is opened, and now he imbibes. To him, her body and her spirit is like a breath of fresh air. She is life to him, but life to his ego is pride. It's really death. Because all the relationships that are built on pride and a woman supporting man's ego turn a man into a raging animal, a wife-beating beast, or a little wimp, made over in the image of the woman. One conforms and one rebels. The beast is the rebel, the wife-beater, the child abuser, right? See now, you see what's happening now? The fixation. You have to unfix. Women are fixated to men. See, men are fixated to women, but women are fixated to men in this much. Men fall in love, and they draw up this thing from the woman. It evolves in them as pride and bestiality and conflict and hate towards the woman eventually. But men fall in love. They look to the woman as the source of the renewing of their spirit of life. But the women fall in hate, because when they see that their men are using them and abusing them and drawing up this dark side, they hate men. And this hatred towards men becomes a fixation. They are addicted to finding a man who will use them so they can hate them, because unless they have something to hate, they can't have a fixation. They need a fixation because if they don't have a fixation, they realize what a degenerate person they've become in playing the role that men's yearnings call out for them to be. You follow that? There's a pride in a woman that comes from men falling. There's a pride, see that? There's a pride in that downfall of the man. And once she imbibes herself, draws into herself some of this strength of his failing, builds herself up as she falls. Now she is addicted to men's downfall, because she can't exist without his downfall. And her love is his downfall. See? And he can't exist without the love, which is a lie. And this love supports everything that's gone wrong with him from the very beginning. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Is she then, therefore, addicted to his upgrading too after the downfall?
No.
Okay, so there's a instant when he switches, does it cut it off?
I don't like the way you said that.
I don't either.
Could you please rephrase that?
Does it sever the tie, okay, between, okay, she's addicted to his downfall.
Right.
Okay, so he changes.
But
I'm
now
not saying
when
that he decides to change.
He
or
he unfixates. Now let us start from the man's
what
point
happens
of view.
to her, though?
Now what happens to her? But let's discuss what happens to the man.
Okay.
Now remember, man is fixated on the woman. And unless he has to be fixated on something, whether it's woman. I mean, when a woman does him in, then it's gambling, then it's drugs. It's all something he has. The fix must be more powerful, because as his guilt grows, so does the need to distract him with a fix of something. It also evolves. Right. Stronger and stronger means of it. Still the same spirit lurking behind every one of those things, you see. So man must see that his love or fixation, everybody thinks of his fixation as love, that his ruination is coming through his fixation to the object, his love-hate object. It's a love-hate. Woman, it's also a hate-love, because out of her hate comes the lie of love. She feels guilty, and she starts to play the role of love, and the man falls for it. Now she's got to hate, right? See, they got to fix. So then as far as man is concerned, he's got to see that his mind is being controlled by being immersed in the object of fixation, by losing himself into the flesh and somehow tapping some nutrient, spirit nutrient for his soul to complete himself, to complete what he thinks of as manliness. Because he's a complete ass, but he doesn't see that because he's got another fix to help him to avoid that, right? You know, you could be watching, you ever see somebody watching television or sitting in a bar, they're drinking and then they're smoking and then they're watching television and while they're drinking and smoking they're thinking about, you know, what next pleasure they got. While you're eating your steak, you're thinking about dessert. You don't let a space go between. Is that right? You don't let it, you're always planning the next fixation, because if you sit back and just relax a little bit and didn't have a fix, you start to feel guilty. So you stay ahead of the guilt until you bomb out or something, you know. You're exhausted and lose yourself in sleep. But unfixate from your knowledge. Unfixate. See, what you have to do is to start to see your thoughts. And stand back. The meditation exercise that we're teaching will give you this objective state. And you can almost, now you have two pairs of eyes. The Bible says they see but they see but they perceive not. They hear but they understand not. Two dimensions, right? Animals only hear, they don't understand. They see but they don't perceive. There's necessary. There's no other dimension for them. That dimension is necessary for our existence. Man does not live by bread alone, but every word, every trickle of insight that comes out of the mouth of God, right? Where's the mouth of God? I know where it is. I mean, I have two mouths, and I have a mouth that speaks through my mouth, and the thinker that thinks through my thinking, right? And the seer that sees through my... See? So I have two sets of eyes. So I stand back, and I'm identified with this other self. And this other self sees through me, and shows me things, and shines a light on everything. And now I see what I could never see before. I see through deception, because I'm related to ultimate truth now. Whatever ultimate truth is, it makes everything obvious. That is, it reveals everything that's deception. And you will always be deceived unless you have ultimate truth. You had the ultimate truth in you when you were born. But everybody around you was afraid of it, and they wouldn't accept that self. So they corrupted that self and put one in that was a replica of them. They cried out, and then you sought their approval, and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. And when you didn't, they made you fight for it. They rejected you, and now you fought. When you rejected, they made you resented it, and you went after it, didn't you? And you made yourself a slave for it, and they still wouldn't give it to you. Maybe they did. If they gave you a little bit, you became addicted, and then they held back again. And they held back on your completion, because you felt like you were going to die without their love and their acceptance, even though they were killing you. even though you knew they were completely mad. There was something about them that you needed from them. That was your life. Follow that? You got to stand back. I saw you take a deep breath when I said that, right? That was you, wasn't it? Okay, yes.
I wonder if it's necessary to pinpoint, where the resentment came from.
You'll see it.
Oh, okay.
It is necessary. It's necessary to see it where it all began, but not right away. The psychiatrists are all wrong when they take you back to a beginning. I don't want you to take you back to a beginning. I want you to take you back to the now. Because where the end is, there is also the beginning. Right now is the end of your miserable, egocentric, glory-filled, knowledge-seeking, self-willed, selfish self. When you realize that you are moving away from knowledge, truth, into your worry, into your doubts, into your fears, into your greed, into your lust, into your open senses, follow? Seeking something out there to complete the self. But this self that you completed is a complete ass. Excuse the expression. And now you have to stand back and see this is a complete ass that you're looking at. And there's no salvation for someone who isn't a complete. Right? When you see that and you don't resent it. Most people, when they see it, they resent seeing it. They resent knowing it. There's a part of you that, even rebels against realizing it and starts to hate that source which causes the realization. That source that causes the realization is also the salvation from it. So you have to recognize it's little stages you have to go through. You have to evolve to seeing that this is what you're doing and this is wrong. That part of you that's making you feel uncomfortable is the part of you that made everybody else feel uncomfortable when you were a child. See? And then you hate it, and you would also hate it in a little child too. And that it loves you. It doesn't hate you back. You only feel the pain of it if you hate it. See? Because then you keep throwing yourself, you keep tempting it. It doesn't. In other words, the more you hate it, the more you realize it exists. Yes. You realize that it's there because you're so close to it at that point. The conflict increases.
Yeah, you can't.
You see that it's a rebellion against God. You see the original rebellion. You see the original sin, the pride, the hate of truth. And what happens when you hate truth? You're separated from the truth. And what happens when you're separated from the truth? No, void. What happens when you're void? Hungry for knowledge. There's the original one again. So you're fixated to be getting ahead, knowledge. You're fixated to the woman that helps you. You're fixated to a food. And there are other enticements that evolve from that relationship that pull you into her body and her beyond so completely that you are completely, your whole life revolves around a female, doesn't it? And a woman's whole life revolves around providing the support services and living out of your downfall, right? Right. And then then all hell breaks loose in the home. Husband and wife kill each other, turn into animals and beasts, and the kids are bewildered, and it's introduced into the next generation. Yes.
So the seeking of knowledge really doesn't have just to do with education.
No.
In other words, a person can never have gone to school and still be a knowledge seeker in the sense that they have faith in their intellect and not in their spirit or some.
Yes. You don't have to be intelligent. You don't have to have a degree or even go to school to get a degree to be intellectual. But one who trusts in the knowledge of their own intellect, in their own cleverness.
Always trying to figure everything out.
Exactly.
Pin everything down.
Yes, and the intellectuals are in bigger trouble. Excuse me. The intellectuals are in bigger trouble than the people who have less knowledge. Because they have more in the way of seeing. They have more confusing them. They're closer to hell than any one of us. Don't worship the intellectuals. There are intelligent people who are very intelligent but are obviously not intellectual. Did you ever see the debate between Jimmy Carter and Reagan? Well, you could see one of you could understand what he was saying, right? Yeah. And it made sense. Reagan has always been, you always like to listen to what he had to say, but the intellectuals don't. We can understand him, but the intellectuals understand but Jimmy Carter. I don't understand what a word he's saying. They understood him. We couldn't understand each other. They think we are mad. We know they're crazy, but they have more knowledge. See? They have substance to their knowing. They have proof, empirical evidence, blah, blah, back. I've got a degree, see? Right? Therefore, I must know more than you. But look at Roy Masters. I've never cracked a book in my life. I write them. And then, you know what I say in the books? Don't read books. No, it's not quite like that. Because that's where I find all the intellectuals there reading books. So eventually I get to the point in the book, say, don't you see, you're understanding me now. You don't put the book away. And listen, read it once in a while. Sip it. Open it at any page. Don't read from the... Read my books. Don't start from the beginning. Just open at any page and then just read until something glows. Close up the book and it's okay for a week. And my book, in the same passage next week, won't say the same thing. Say something different. But the Bible is like that. If you don't read it from beginning to end, just open up anywhere. Read till something clicks. And if nothing clicks, don't bother. It's not your day. Don't try to make something click. Or something will snap. You see? Just let it be that way. Let the hand guide the spirit within you guide. Open the book somewhere, just naturally. The boy. And then the truth, when you're ready for the truth, it will be the aha that unfixates you to knowledge. It transfers you. That moment of truth transfers you over to the process of understanding what you're saying. And as you begin to become an understanding person, you can throw all your books away. Never crack a book as long as you live. After a certain point, you become a knowledgeable person, discovering in a lightning flash, concluding in a lightning flash what they couldn't transfer linearly, in a linear way, one to another through all their immense intellects. I learn in a lightning flash. I see in a lightning flash. I know. Now, I know, for example, I mentioned this last time, it's very funny, but we have all these intellectuals with their concern for all these poor AIDS victims. I say serves them all right for the most part. It's one way of getting rid of the immorals. I don't know what we can do. They're going to inundate the place if God doesn't do something with AIDS. So, and they're trying to cure it, but they've forgotten the cause, that immorality is they're paying the piper. They've broken laws and they've become so degenerate that they've opened themselves to all kinds of disease. But they have their own kinds to protect them now. Don't you see? Pass laws. Because the higher you go in the intellectual scale, the more you find yourself in the halls of power. The snake is up there. He rises as we fall, don't you see? He seduces, and he gets stronger and we get weaker. Anyway, the intellectuals are so stupid, it's not even funny. Now, this is the absurd one. I mentioned it last time. I've got to mention it again. They have a practice called fisting in homosexuality. You know what that is? Well, I'm just going to inform you so you know what you're getting into when you buy their line. There's a gland in a man's rear end. I have to tell you this. It's called the prostrate, and you can stimulate that, and they get a lot of pleasure out of that. It's a sexual gland, see? And I know what they do. But they're finding this perverse pleasure, and one of the perverse pleasures is called. They take a fist and insert it in the other person's rectum. See? And now one guy got AIDS from this. He had a scratch on his arm or something. He got AIDS from this sexual pleasure. And you think now that, what do you think the doctor said? He said, you have to practice safe sex. Wear gloves. These are intellectuals, you see. These are the people who are running your world. They're insane. And people are so numbed by, been brainwashed by this that they may not even notice it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in big trouble. all of us have to find the kingdom of heaven within us. And if we have the kingdom of heaven within us, we will all be children of the same light. And there'll be no government. There'll only be administration, to keep the roads tidy and things like that, the sewers working and things. But we'll all be children of the same light. There'll be no leaders. They'll have a war, nobody come. We'll all be made of a different stuff, the right stuff. Thank you very much. Now we're going to close our program for this week and invite listeners to watch, or viewers to watch next week, if we're still here. So send money. I mean, send it to God, but I'll take charge of it meanwhile. To pay the bills, because He doesn't need your money, but if I do, to deliver this message to you. Otherwise, this eye will close. This outer eye will close and we won't be on your television tube. So please bear this in mind. Very important. Thank you very much. Listen to me on radio, 870 on the dial, and you can be in the studio audience if you call the number at the end of the program at a godly hour. Thank you for listening, and join us again.